All right, hey folks. So today we're going to do a little roundup of the Arnold Classic over the weekend to have a look at the results, to give you my analysis, and also to point out just how right I was and just how wrong the rest of the paddle was. so we're going to start off just having a look at some of the prejudging photos, and I want to tell you about what I saw, some of the controversy with Steve Kuclo, why I felt he dropped down in place, and my initial thoughts of Steve. In the prejudging and also during the show that I did with the guys a few days ago, why my predictions came true about Steve, because I just don't see what those guys are seeing with him. So let me just talk you through this. Firstly, I'm going to bring up this comparison here of Sergio and Steve. This is from the prejudging, I believe. No, it was from the night show. Now, one of the criticisms that I had against Steve right from the beginning was he lacks the definition which a lot of the guys have in the modern day. So last few years, the judges have been increasingly rewarding like higher and higher levels of definition. Now at that stage, to be that defined is almost a rarity. Like we're quite used to the mass monsters just coming up looking a little bit sloppy and out of shape. Nowadays, you can't get away with that. And for far too long, we've heard the excuses like, oh, it's hard to get a big guy in shape, all that kind of stuff. But bottom line is it's their job. They need to get it right. And then you get a guy who comes in looking like this, wham, and all of a sudden the big guys who were previously saying, well, it's hard to peak if you're a big guy, it's easy for the lightweight guys, it's easy for the natural guys, well, that goes out the window, because then you're like, well, look at this guy. It happened last year or the year before with Hadi Chupan. Everyone's talking about how it's difficult to get definition. Perhaps it's the lighting in the 90s was better, all kinds of excuses are brought up, and then wham, Hadi steps on stage, jaws drop, and they're like, okay, no, that guy's got conditioning. And we also saw that in a few shows this year when guys were competing and prepping for ages because they didn't know whether they were going to have a competition due to lockdowns and such. And last year as well, people were just prepping for like 8 months straight, and they were just getting harder and harder and harder and more dug out. You get a guy like Nick who basically views this as a full-time job, and then wham, he comes in looking like that. It's insane. Something that Joe pointed out on the podcast was that we are seeing more and more people really get it dug in and taking this seriously and doing everything necessary, just like they do in other sports. They're not resting on their laurels. They're pulling it all out. And the longer off seasons, the longer prep periods are meaning for people looking more and more dug out, more and more chiseled. And that's what we saw with Nick. So it really calls into question all those competitors talking about lighting and et cetera, et cetera. So if we go back to Steve, what I saw was this here. Level of abdominal definition is, for this day and age, it's poor. It's poor. And if we look at his quad on this side, his left quad, the right side from where I'm looking, it lacks definition. Sure, the sartorius is coming out in the right quad, but that's because he's posing it on his tiptoe. There's no definition in the left quad there whatsoever. In his midsection, it's clouded. It's soft, pretty much. It's very watery. He could stand to lose an additional 5 pounds from this stage to get to that really dug out level of conditioning. Sergio looks a lot better. Like Sergio he kind of stretches his abs out and he has lines in his abs. That's a very, very good looking midsection. But Sergio is nice and dug out. So this was my problem always with Steve. I don't understand how people don't see this. Like he's clearly not in the same shape as Nick or the type of shape he needs to be in. He's clearly not. Like I don't see how people don't see this with him. There's no argument in my mind. Like he even after the prejudging, I wouldn't have placed him anything close to the top two. I wouldn't have placed him third. I wouldn't have, not even for this. I've been very critical of Steve, but it's for that reason. Like I just don't think he comes in sharp, and he's consistently always off. So if I'm being a bit harsh, it's just there's a sense of disappointment as well. He could do so much better. Hassan, I mean, with Hassan, you almost expect this of him to be off. I don't know what he needs to do to come in at some point, but I mean, he's just for today's bodybuilding standards, he's at least 10 pounds too heavy. I think Akeem was off today as well, so it's a big question mark. Justin Rodriguez looked spectacular. I mean, great physique, really looked good. I stand by what I said in terms of his most muscular. He shows that he lacks tricep, but his full frontal sort of like double double lat spread, and double bicep all look fantastic. Ian, I think, missed his mark a little bit today, yesterday. Mohamed El Amam didn't quite look like himself. Midsection is starting to look very big. Song Chul looked pretty good, looked pretty lean. He doesn't have the best ab genetics, but he was pretty peeled, so that was good. But yeah, the story of the day really comes down to Nick. Max, I was disappointed with Max. I don't know what he's doing. The story of the day comes down to Nick. And so let's take a look at some of these comparisons. Let's have a look at this. This one in particular, I think, tells quite a story. So here we go. So Nick here, he just makes everybody else look out of shape. The definition everywhere is superb. I will say that massively impressed with Justin Rodriguez. I thought he really climbed up the rankings here because he was dug out. I think with Steve, again, I'll say it again, it's the conditioning problem. I think he's come from an old school era where it was all right to just be the man's fast monster, but he's had some time away from the game, and that's cost him. Like, bodybuilding is moving so fast at the moment. Like, ever since we've transitioned away from sort of the end of Phil Heath era, bodybuilding has moved so fast. I mean, you look at the condition that Phil was in the last time he won the Olympia, it was sloppy. And he came back and he got gifted with his placing when he came back, I feel. But the level of conditioning has come along massively. The game has massively changed over the last 3 years. We're seeing guys who are 250, 260 on stage and dug out. And that's the new standard from now on. And we can see how Ramy eventually won by getting very, very peeled. And that was eventually what did it for him. So, yeah, well-deserved champion. Well-deserved win by Nick. And in terms of sort of Nick versus Ramy, that is the big question. All I will say on that front is this. Nick versus Ramy. Everyone's very excited about Ramy, saying that he's the guy who can, have a long rain, a long winter, all that kind of stuff, because he came in shape last year. Just remember, I'm not going to say anything either way, because I love Ramy. Ramy's a great bodybuilder. He's enormous. But just remember, he missed the mark for years before he finally got it right last year. He missed the mark for a long time. We're really banking on that guy to come in shape again after he's had so many misses relative to so many times when once he's been on the mark. I'll just leave you with that thought. You give me your thoughts on that. Nick, he's fresh, he's young, he's never missed the mark, and he continuously gets better and sharper. And we're not saying it's a two-horse race. Of course, there's Hadi as well. There's Brandon Curry, who looks amazing at the moment. But there'll be a massive question mark over whether Ramy can bring the kind of conditioning that won him the Olympia after he missed the mark so many times, so badly. So thanks for that, and I'll speak to you guys.